The purpose of this training is to cover best practices and test security and confidentiality procedures for assessments across the nation, the state, as well as CFBISD local assessments. You can always find more information on specific individual assessments by visiting our CFBISD assessment Google site at cfbisd.edu/assessment, also located on the Assessment tab in the staff portal. This training does not replace your obligation for reading your assessment manuals and attending any additional campus training sessions. You'll want to identify access to any necessary manuals and guides, as well as directions and procedures around your test administration, and be sure to read those manuals prior to administering any assessment. Let's start by reviewing some of the different types of assessments. First, we'll look at state assessments. State assessments consist of the STAR test, the TELPAS, STAR Alt 2, and TELPAS Alt. In CFB ISD, we also administer some local assessments, including our District Common Informative Assessments, Fontes and Pinnell reading levels, end of unit assessments, as well as some assessments connected to the Teacher Incentive Allotment, or TIA. We also measure the MAP. We utilize the Measure of Academic Progress, or MAP test, for both growth and fluency, as well as College Board and ACT assessments, which consist of AP, SAT, PSAT, NMSQT, TSIA2, and ACT. And these assessments are primarily administered to secondary students and high school students. A note about our teacher incentive allotment assessments. TIA assessments utilized as a measure on the TIA scorecard undergo a validation check prior to submission, and failure to follow testing security protocols may result in an invalidation of these results. So, what is test security? Test security preserves the integrity of all test content to ensure that the results are meaningful and valid. It also includes adherence to instructions and procedures contained in the test administration manuals and resources, and the goal is to ensure a fair and equal testing opportunity for all students. Test security also involves accounting for all of the secure materials before, during, and after test administrations. One of the keys to producing valid test results is consistent assessment practices before, during, and after each assessment. The following tests are some tests that have secure test materials. These tests that have secure test materials include the STAR EOC, STAR Alt 2, TELPAS, College Board assessments, as well as MAP and TIA assessments. For secure test materials, the materials may contain secure test content, and any viewing, discussing, or recording of this confidential information is prohibited. Test administrators who have permission to view secure content must be reminded that responding to test questions, recording the information they see, scoring a test, or discussing the content of secure tests is strictly prohibited prior to or during testing. Specifically, discussion of our state assessments is also strictly prohibited at any time, including after the assessment. Secure test material and oral administration. Oral administration is predominantly provided through use of text-to-speech feature. Test administrators who have permission to view secure test materials must undergo additional training and be mindful that they are viewing secure test content. Even when doing an oral administration test, test administrators may not respond to test questions, make notes about those questions, discuss the content, write notes, rephrase or clarify or interpret any of the test content, or provide verbal or nonverbal assistance. In terms of the testing environment, no element of the room should hinder any student's performance. It is a good idea to put up a testing do not disturb sign outside of a testing room, and always ensure that all desks or computer workstations must be cleared of books or other materials not required for testing, and students should not have viewable access to other students' assessments. In terms of maintaining the testing environment, it is not necessary to conceal or remove instructional materials or reference materials unless they could provide assistance or be a direct source of an answer for the subject area being administered. Below are a few examples of some content specific materials that would not be a good idea to have up on the wall. CFBISD does have an electronic device testing policy, and by clicking the QR code to the right, it will take you directly to that link. A few key points in this policy is electronic devices must be powered off and either turned into the test administrator to hold on to until all students have completed the test or secured in the student's backpack. It is important to note here that we have learned at its district level that if we are consistent with our cell phone testing policies, it makes it easier on everyone involved. So we do ask that you review this cell phone testing policy and implement that in your classroom anytime you're giving a test. Our goal is to be sure that each student turns their device off, they put it in their bag, and their bag is moved up to the front of the room so that they can see their bag, see where their phone is, but we're not so not asking our teachers to actually take possession of someone else's device. As far as monitoring testing, perhaps the most important thing is to always actively monitor during any type of assessment that you're providing. Active monitoring includes confirming students have the correct test material, as well as moving throughout the room to ensure test security. Perhaps the most important measure that anyone can take to ensure a successful test administration is actively moving around the room and being aware and actively monitoring students as they take their assessments. In terms of confidentiality, compliance with confidentiality starts with you. Be trained on your obligation concerning confidentiality and test security. Read all manuals and sign any needed oath. Actively monitor the test administration to ensure the tests are administered in accordance with the testing procedures, and notify an assessment coordinator if we need to investigate or report any alleged or confirmed incidents. Capturing or transmitting secure content is a serious violation of test security. If a staff or student takes photographs or duplicates secure test content or disseminates this information using an electronic device, contact the test specific campus coordinator. Test validity considerations. Consistent administration practices are critical to producing valid and usable test results. For example, the number of students in the testing room, the time for students to complete a given assessment, communication of performance and effort expectations from the teacher, accommodations and supports, as well as incentives and rewards for performance must remain consistent across each like assessment. For example, fall, winter, and spring map, as well as local assessments calculated into the TIA scorecard. Unfortunately, test irregularities do happen, and there are two types of irregularities: serious and procedural. Serious irregularities are a severe violation of test security, whereas procedural irregularities reflect minor errors or deviations in testing procedures or inconsistent administration practices. Serious testing irregularities, because they do constitute a severe violation, must be immediately reported to and investigated by the test specific campus coordinator. Confirmed violations should be reported to campus and district leadership. Serious irregularities may include, but are not limited to, directly assisting students, tampering with responses, responding to secure test questions, providing unallowable assistance, encouraging or insisting an individual to engage in any other serious violation, or failing to report to the appropriate authority if an individual has engaged or is suspected of engaging in conduct described in the items listed above. Procedural irregularities reflect minor errors or deviations in testing procedures. They do not represent a severe breach in security, and they fall into the following categories: administration errors, monitoring errors, eligibility errors, accommodation errors, accounting errors, and training errors. Some examples of procedural testing irregularities include a designated support is not provided, improper active monitoring, a student was improperly monitored during a break, a student was permitted to test beyond the allowed time limit and was not provided the full allotted time to complete their assessment, or a student was issued test materials or a test ticket belonging to another student. Some other examples include if a student was offered an incentive or a reward for growth on a spring administration of MAP, but they were not offered the same incentive or reward in the fall or the winter. Or if a student is provided an accommodation on their end of year assessment that the student was not provided on the BOY assessment, and this decision is not supported by a documented change in need. Another example would be if students are provided inconsistent directions and expectations. For example, in the fall, the teacher tells the class, just do your best, but in the spring tells the class, I really need you to go give your best effort on this test because how you perform can affect my paycheck. We want to continue to be consistent throughout all of the administrations of MAP as well as other assessments throughout the year, and failure to do so is considered a procedural testing irregularity. How do you report irregularities? Contact your test specific campus coordinator. Clearly explain what happened, how it occurred, outline the sequence of events, include information about how the problem was resolved, and include a plan of action to prevent the incident from occurring again. If a student is suspected to be cheating, contact your test specific campus coordinator right away. Preventing testing irregularities, ensure that there's accurate testing roster that includes information about accommodations, create and utilize accurate seating charts, announce the time left to test in regular intervals, provide required test materials, verify that each student has recorded responses on his or her answer documents. Note that this one is highlighted. It is important on all assessments to be sure that the students have submitted their responses. And that's a good practice, not just on STAR tests but on all assessments throughout the year. Account for any test materials at all times. Verify that each student has access to the right test. Ensure fall, winter, and spring administrations of MAP, BOY, and EOY local assessment practices are consistent throughout. Depending on the assessment you're proctoring, there may be additional training modules that you'll need to watch prior to testing. Be sure to attend all training sessions at campus to ensure you're meeting all testing requirements. Thank you for completing the test security confidentiality training. Please feel free to visit our Assessment Google site for more information and specific assessment information in CFB ISD.